I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer at Gold Derby, and I am joined today by Emmy Award nominee William Jackson Harper, who stars as Royal on Barry Jenkins' 10-episode limited series, The Underground Railroad, which is based on Colson Whitehead's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel of the same name. So, William, I read that you auditioned for this role. Which scene did you audition with? Is it one that we actually get to see in the show?
Yes, well, it was a few scenes from the show. One was the conversation with Mingo uh, when he's trying to, make his case for getting Cora off of the farm, and and then Cora and I's first encounter when she's at the farm. Um, and then the other one was actually when we actually went down into the tunnel. So those three scenes together. So it was a lot of text, a lot of words there. But yeah.
And I've always been curious about this. How much of a character do you already have you already crafted upon entering the audition process? I mean, in this case, you had the source material to draw on. So how well do you feel like
Right.
you already knew Royal at that point in time?
I didn't know Royal real well. I had sort of like looked up who he was in the book, sort of like Sparks noted it, just to be
Yeah.
like, okay, where does he come in? What does he do? And who is he? And then it wasn't actually until I got the part that I read the book, but I had a, in the sort of online, universe of the world of the book. I had a general vague idea of who he was, and then I was just like, well, let me just go with that because there's no way I'm going to actually be able to digest the book and prepare this audition in the time that I needed to do it in.
Right. And how big of a gap was there between you actually signing on to the project and your first day in front of the camera on set?
Uh, God, I want to say it was probably about a month.
A month.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it was near the end of our run on the Good Place, and we were actually um, heading down to Comic Con when I got the call that I was going to be in the project. And at that point, we had like 2 or 3 episodes left, the Good Place, and or actually 2 or 3 episodes of shooting left in the States on the Good Place before
Mhm.
Underground Railroad started up.
Right, because 1 month is not a lot of preparation time. Because when I spoke to your co-star Tuso Mbedu 2 weeks ago, she revealed that she had to practically unlearn everything she knew about the enslaved body in America when preparing for this project. You're obviously not playing a slave on the show, but a freeborn Black man. So, what did your preparation process look like after you ultimately signed on to the project and you had this 1 month time?
Well, Royal is very much a guy who lives by his own code in a time when that was not afforded to Black people as an option, and so I think for me it was my preparation was downloading a lot of narratives of people who had escaped slavery and sort of investing in that in a different way, hearing their words. Like Duso found an archive of people reading them and stuff like that, which I didn't come across. I just read a few different read a few different narratives, and I feel like that's what drives Royal. To do a lot of what he does. It's just that there's this firm belief that what is happening is wrong, and he's going to do everything that he can to fight it. And so it was a lot of that, and pulling on other projects that I've been involved with, like for inspiration, like John Mercer Langston. I've played him in this audio series, and this was a man who was ahead of his time and was doing these things that like I didn't know anything about him in history class, but after working on this project, I was like, wow, this is a man who he was a Black congressman, like one of the first, and he founded Howard. He was an ambassador to Haiti, and he was doing all these things in the time of Reconstruction, and even going forward from that. And so, I was just like, this is a man who's living by his own code, and there's something reminiscent of that in my envisioning of Royal.
Right, and before we get into his arc, you've done a lot of or quite a bit of television work in your career, especially in form of guest appearances on a number of different shows, and then you were obviously a regular on The Electric Company, and most recently, of course, on The Good Place. How does your experience on the Underground Railroad compare to these past TV experiences, especially in the sense that you didn't have different directors for each one of your main 3 episodes, because Barry Jenkins directed all 10. So how did that influence your process?
It's well, in that way, it's. I mean, each one of those projects is very, very different. You know, I think that honestly, working on the Underground Railroad, it didn't feel like episodic television. It felt like one big piece that we were making. It was a long arc. It felt more like a 10-hour movie, um, in that there was a uniformity of aesthetic, and the notes that we were getting, and the way we were being sort of coaxed into rendering these characters, it was consistent. I think that sometimes when you're dealing with when you're a regular on a show and you have a different director come in, sometimes you have to sort of guide that ship a little bit because you've been on the show longer. You just know the character, you know how the arc is going, and you have information that the director might not. And in this case, Barry had way more information than any of us had, and so um, in that way, it felt more like working on a film. In that it was his vision, and we just sort of gave ourselves over to that, because it was, you know, I mean, well, we just trust his taste, and he's a genius. So, yeah.
Right. And how meaningful was it to you and for everyone else to have guidance counselors on set?
I mean, I think it was important. I never used the guidance
Hmm.
counselor. I maybe I should have at one point, but I did not. But it was comforting to know that we were going to be going to some very real, very dark places, and it does affect you, and it's really important to have someone there safeguarding your mental health and to sort of help you stay on track. I think the thing that was important for me to realize was that, um, this what's happening isn't real, and we're all on the same team trying to tell this story and trying to check those sort of those emotions that sort of get out of control sometimes when the cameras aren't rolling. And we all did our part to sort of like keep the energy light when it could be, and to take care of each other. And so I mean, I think that that's just it was really important to have that resource there should you decide to use it.
Absolutely. And now to get into his arc a bit, you as Royal make your first real appearance in episode 6, in which Ridgway takes Cora to his father's home. And when they're in town, they walk past Royal, who kind of gazes after Cora. What is going through his head in that specific moment?
Well, it's a really messed up picture, you know. You see, you see a man walking with a very well dressed black child and a black woman in shackles, and it's all wrong. Everything about it is wrong, and it seems particularly cruel because it feel to me it was just like this is this is like a power play. This is like a cruel, this is what, like, showing her what she can't be and what she can't have, and there's like a level of cruelty there that I think is highly triggering for Royal. I think any enslaved person would set him off, and I think that seeing someone parading someone around town in a place where black men are just sort of hanging out and doing their own thing, um, is a particularly draconian act, and I think that I think that just sort of it's like that's I think in that moment it just sort of clicks for him that he has to do something about this woman in particular.
Right. And after he frees Cora and takes her to the Valentine farm, she is initially a bit cautious, but eventually she really opens her heart to Royal, him being one of the only people in whom she actually confides on her journey. Could you talk me through the depth of this relationship and what these two contribute to each other, especially given that he is, as aforementioned, a freeborn Black man, whereas she is a runaway?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to trust a good thing when your life has been nothing but suffering. I think that um, Cora, from Royal's point of view, she's always waiting for the other shoe to drop, and he's trying to coax her out of that way of thinking. Because we've been on Valentine Farm a long time, and we've flourished, and we've made money, and we've prospered, and um, we have a loving community there that she can join, but she doesn't seem to trust it. And I really want her to, because I want her to sort of get rid of or try to come through the psychological terrorism that slavery was as well. It's like, freeing the body is one thing, but I think that the other thing is freeing the mind, and I feel like that's something that Royal is trying to help her help her do. And I think that there is just a spark between them. I think it's there's a it's really present in Tuso's performance, where it's just there's a determination in her that she just exudes, and I think that that's a very attractive thing. Like Will, like me as a dude, Will, and think also Royal does too, and I think it just sort of it intrigues him, and for someone to have that kind of strength just radiating from them after having been through so much, I think it's, um, you know, there's a touch of admiration there as well. Um, that she's willing to take these risks, and she's willing to to run, even though the punishment for being caught and brought back could be death.
Mhm.
There's something there. There's a that I'm unfamiliar with, and that's very unique about her.
Right, and your co-star Aaron Pierre said that his character Caesar contributes only a small flame to the burning fire that is already within Cora, and that he perhaps represents possibility and hope in her journey. So, what do you think Royal represents in her journey, and thereby in this entire show? I know you've touched on it a tiny bit already, but if you could elaborate on that a bit.
Well, I think possibilities. I think that it's I think that there is hope as well, but I think that beyond just hope for a future that is uh, you know a future of freedom. I think that it's like there is a possibility of actually flourishing and living beyond fear and danger. And I think that that's what I don't even know that that's necessarily just Royal. I think that's something that the Valentine Farm
Yeah.
represents. That it is possible to flourish even in a system that works its hardest to bring you down and to keep you in bondage. So I feel like that's what Royal represents, but I think it's really more emblematic of the whole of Valentine Farm.
Absolutely. And how was it working with Tuso? And what were some of the conversations the two of you had off screen, either before or during the shoot? That's a question I like to ask quite often.
Like Tuso and I actually became pretty close over the course of shooting. When I first got there, I was definitely, it was sort of a whirlwind. Like I think I had just finished The Good Place and was heading to start on the Underground Railroad, and
Hmm.
um, feeling very out of my depth. It was a very very different feeling on set, and a very different story, and there's a different set of mechanisms you have to use for this genre than when you're working on a wacky sort of sci-fi comedy like The Good Place. And I had to sort of like get rid of all that. But for the first couple of days, I was just sort of trying to feel her out and feel what makes her comfortable, because I think one of the things that Royal does is try to be the person that she needs him to be. And so there was a part of me that was just like, just it takes me. I'm a shy person, so like it takes me a second to sort of warm up. And Tuso is she can be sometimes a little quiet and shy and reserved, but then once you get to know her, and the same with me, the weirdest, funniest person can come out. And I mean, I'm not necessarily the funniest person, but she's an oddball. She's great, and I think that we just sort of found a rhythm where we were just able to play and live in the lightness, because what so much of our relationship is joy and kindness and love. Um, and so it was great. She's also just an incredibly focused, honest performer, and that means that I need to be there with her. I need to like open up myself as well, and I tried to do that as best I could, and I think she trusted me, and I trusted her, and she's a generous performer and a great person, and yeah, we hung out quite a bit, and it was great. It was great.
Well, that's great. And I actually asked her this same question as well. But what did you learn as an actor and as a human being, maybe even about yourself, from this entire experience?
Well, Royal embodies a lot of things that I aspire to.
Mm.
That I'm not quite there yet. Like he's definitely a much more certain, uh, quietly confident person than I am, and um, that's something that I'm working toward. And I think that there is a he's a man who acts rather than spins out in his head about what's the right thing to do. I think that I can find myself paralyzed with what is the correct course of action, and he's the kind of person that decides what the correct course of action is, and looks for what the absolute good is and goes for that. And um, and so that's something that I'm working on. I think that I second guess myself as a grown man a lot, and I don't think Royal does that. And so that's something that yeah, it's really more about like me aspiring to be the kind of person that he is, in a lot of ways.
And what you'll be doing next is that you'll be headlining the second season of HBO Max's romantic comedy anthology series, Love Life. Just briefly, could you talk about how this project came your way and what we can expect from you in it, and how all of these past experiences, including the Underground Railroad, always shape the next experience or the next project you're going to do?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like, yeah, as you said, it's an anthology series. So the first season dealt with a woman going through her 20s and, trying to find her way in New York, and who she's going to be and who she's going to partner with, and, all the mess that comes with that. And this season will center on someone who's older and has pretty much had his life mapped out in a lot of ways. And then that all gets thrown up into the air. And how does he rebound from that? I think that it's going to be a very, very different season. And there's a messiness to being a 30 something and having your life blow up that I think a lot of people will understand and perhaps identify with. It's cringy, but it's not full of the same mistakes that you make when you're in your 20s. It's mistakes that blindside you in a very different way. They're not born out of a wild time. They're born out of terrible errors in judgment and lapses in judgment, um, and then also the impasse that happens when like you can't be together, or you want to be together but you can't for reasons other than the love being gone or not. um, so it's that's we're sort of diving into all those things. And I think that as far as this project being informed by other ones, I think every process is just so different. I never really know how each process informs the other until it's finished, or
Mhm,
until I'm in the
mhm,
midst of it. I think that with this one, it's my first time being in every scene, and having this story really center around the character that I'm playing, and so that's brand new territory for me, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. I'm curious to see what from the past is going to work its way in, and sort of help me, create this character, and stay sane in the process,
mhm.
going forward.
And in that regard, and perhaps on a final note, would you say that it's important for you in your career to constantly change things up a bit, as in to explore different genres and different media, or do you just let these things come your way and make your decisions based on that and don't even think about whether it's completely different from the project that you did right before that?
I like to try things that are going to challenge me and they're a little bit frightening, that
Mhm.
I'm not sure if I can do it. Um, I think that I did want to move away from the character of Chidi, just because I
Yeah.
played that character for so long. But it was, obviously it wasn't like the bulk of my career or anything like that. It was just, the character that I had spent the most time with. And I think that generally I make the decisions based on the material,
Right.
case by case basis. Genre doesn't really matter to me as much as the character. Is it going to be something that's going to be challenging and tough in a way that, keeps me feeling like I'm a little bit out of my depth? I feel like that's the space where I grow a little bit more. And um, it's also, I feel like as I've sort of settled into adulthood, it's easy to sort of just be on autopilot and
Mhm.
just do the things that come easy, and like, this is the thing I do, this is the thing that I'm selling or whatever. And I feel like in college and high school, I was always a little bit like, I'm not really sure if I'm doing this right, or if I know what's going on, but I'm gonna try. And that's what, I'm sort of chasing that feeling all the time, from part to part and from project to project. Is like, what is going to make me feel like I'm out of my depth and exploring something completely different.
Well, thank you so much for shedding light on that very interesting decision making. And thank you so much for joining us today. To our viewers, make sure to go to goldderby.com to make your predictions. And before you go, click subscribe to watch all of our great content with top contenders. Thank you so much.